So this video is due to the fact that a video that I labeled R, I didn't see it posted. It was a message to all black people. Something I want every black person in America to understand, okay, to know as historical fact. The movie Roots is historically inaccurate. I was 10th grade. And if it wasn't for the fact that in our class got to watch the movie Roots, because we were special, so and I would have told the teacher, like, let me sit out in the hall the rest of the movie, in the part where white people with guns showed up and captured blacks and put them on a slave ship, right? And except for my teacher was also my football coach, so I felt it would have been dishonorable or what have you, but any other teacher, I'd imagine, I would have objected, because, and it's a matter of actual historical history, right? Now, for any black person that's mad at white people because rich plantation owners owned slaves, because what happened was somebody didn't like the idea that America would come. Europeans would come to America and use the indigenous people for slaves, right? So they're like, okay, we'll use Africans. So they went to Africa and they bought Africans off of Africans, okay? So I'm not sure what's worse, and I think it's probably equal, owning slaves or selling them. In a case, if you were to sell slaves, I guess you would have to own them. So you'd be both owning them and selling them. And then again, buying a slave, you would have to be equally as bad in some odd sense, because you'd have to be buying them and owning them. But one could say if they weren't selling them, no one would buy them. But you could also say if no one bought them, no one would be selling them. So let's just say, for lack of making a true and correct argument with a logical answer to this conundrum, which one is worth, let's just say that those are equal, okay? Now, if a black person was to hate white people, do you know what I mean? And this is a response to the fact that I'm white and I'm not racist, because if I was racist, then that'd be a conversation between me and God, like, then I'd have to say something like, God, what the heck were you thinking making black people? And I'd have to ridicule him. So I'm not a racist. However, I am white. Do you know what I mean? And then so sometimes I think to myself, I thought before in the past, well, if I was black, I would hate white people. Do you know what I mean? But then you need to think about, for owning slaves for 400 years. But you need to realize is slavery, so if you're black and hate white people because rich white people own them, and you have to understand the people that slaves weren't inexpensive, okay, and you would have to have been rich to own them. So there were, it was probably more. I mean, we fought a war over the situation. Okay, now, so let's say you would have to hate yourself equally as much as you hated a white person for owning slaves, because Africans sold Africans to white people, okay? Africans sold Africans into slavery. You understand? So this is what I want everybody to know and realize. And also, I want everybody to know and realize that Hillary Clinton is a supporter. Now, here's a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white woman, right, who is a fan historically of Margaret Sanger, to what case created Planned Parenthood and allegedly put these Planned Parenthood clinics in predominantly black neighborhoods because she wanted to essentially kill black people and limit their numbers, right? So anyone that was black that would vote for Hillary Clinton must be smoking crack, right? I mean, you must be high on something, because Hillary Clinton, and I've seen a KKK, I've seen, they were a proponent of, they're like, we love Hillary. she's a fan of Margaret Sanger. It has their beliefs. Do you know what I mean? Now, I can't be considered racist just because I'm white, right? And I don't want anyone to think that blacks can't be racist also equally too as well. And it's not justification that whites own slavery to be racist against whites. Do you understand? Because Africans sold Africans to white people. In the movie Roots, the people showed up with guns. Now, what would a gun do you if you were going to try to capture slaves? These people, right, would fight to the death, okay? Now, the fact is Africans didn't have weapons, and how would having a gun do you any good? Now, I don't know. I don't know. I'm just telling history as it is, and I want every black person in America to know that black Africans, sold Africans. The video that I saw was on TCT network. The show is called Faith in History. The host of the show, that's the only one on the show that speaks, his name is William Federer, and it's highly informative television. It was on Memorial Day. Unfortunately, I went to TCT Network, and they didn't have the show that aired that day, and they don't have any of the shows that aired with him, and it's almost like, why would they censor a religious program? Like, that is so fucking foul that they wouldn't have the same program on YouTube as they would on a TV show. And it has something to do with syndication or whatever, or something, I'd imagine. But it's just preposterous to me to think there'd be a religious program that wouldn't want to, promote their television shows for free and in full length on YouTube. It makes me sick. Well, you know what I mean? I'm just absolutely, totally, and I think I've explained myself enough on my discontent, or distent, or whatever the hell the word is. So, recapping, Africans sold Africans. So, if you were black and hated white people because of 400 years of slavery, because of rich white people. Now, in my opinion, right, it all comes down to like, it's money. It's class warfare. It's not racial warfare. That's what I think that I really want Africans to understand. You know what I'm saying? It comes down to large amounts of money to that extent. And that's pretty much it. And I'm sure my other video is better than sometimes my videos don't post. So what I'm doing now, from now on, I'm making a video, I'm posting it. I'm making sure it posted, and then I'm deleting it. And then I'm going to check it again after, because I had several videos, and it'll tell me I'm out of space, and I think this is a better method. At any rate, that's the message I want all black people to know, that Hillary Clinton's a supporter of Margaret Sanger. See, now me, the Bible, the book, the good book, you got the Old and New Testament, okay? Says, be fruitful and multiply. So anyone, in my opinion, trying to control human population numbers by poisoning the water, by putting, poisonous chemicals in our food supply, genetically modifying food, the rest of it, and staging fictitious wars in order to, say for example Vietnam, for terms of for population control, as they call it. In my opinion, people that believe that the world is overpopulated should either shoot themselves to solve the problem or be executed. You understand? Because these people that scheme, get together, and fucking do mathematics don't calculate for the amount of geniuses that would be able to solve these, whatever they are called, our alleged problems. 75% of people in America live in major metropolitan areas. I can only think of 25 cities off the top of my head. And the rest of it, there is just vast amounts of land. Sure, it's owned by someone that is not populated, but very sparsely, right? and the consideration about actually living underground where all the food will just be farmed on the surface of the land and people would live underground. And no, and everyone builds these fucking pardon my language, but don't pardon me, these skyscrapers, and they get all off on their ego, and it's not a giant penis, but they get off on that they can build the tallest structure or whatever in the world, and nobody is getting off on how deep we can dig down and live. You know what I mean? Nobody's talking about how safe it may be, because I think underground living would be, and depending on the depth, potentially more dangerous, because I can't do the math off the top of my head and how earthquakes would affect underground living and many other factors. But if you could imagine a place where there was a plain state and everybody had maybe there was one big skyscraper and it was a parking garage, or if you had a platform you drive your car, or you had underground facilities to take you to your actual, what I'm saying, like a train station to get you to your actual dwelling. Do you know what I mean? And it's safer to sleep underground anyways, because what's the situation? You'll be better sheltered from cosmic background radiation, more so. So you can imagine a place where maybe it's, instead of a parking garage, it's actually like an elevator where your car parks and goes down a level, and they have vacuums to suck the freaking fumes out of the area, and you park your car and you take your car to what essentially I'm saying is, if humans just went underground and farmed on the surface, then you would get just a simple design, and I'm not talking about having, what's it called, rooftop gardens. I'm talking about literally living underground, underneath vast sprawls of farmland. You understand? And you get rid of so many alleged, aspects of running out of space. Do you know what I mean? And there can be areas for people to freaking, accumulate near, man-made lakes as such. You know what I mean? There's a completely different philosophy and idea and ideal about how as that humans could live. Money's not real. It's created out of thin air. From my understanding, it's created out of debt. So if we realize that robots in the future, and partly even now, have been taking over humans' jobs, and there's no reason to say that a human's worthless because they don't produce. Do you know what I'm trying to say? There is, pardon me, two statistics that I like to share. One of them is, this is something someone told me, and I don't have any verification of this. So if anyone wants to correct me in a text under this post, I don't know if anybody even listens to these, but situation as to where oh yes, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I was told this, that if you took all the people on the entire earth and put them in one spot so that there was no people anywhere else on the earth, into a city format, it would be a city, and it's compared to what Los Angeles looks like. They said it'd be a city. They said it would be a city similar to Los Angeles, the size of Texas. And yes, Texas is a rather large state. But if you think about all the other places in the world, and with those facts, if they're true, to think that the world's overpopulated is preposterous. Now, the other fact is, I believe it's Rhode Island, okay? And I don't know how big Rhode Island is, and I could be mistaken. It could be a different state even. If you took everybody on Earth, right, and you told them they had to lay down next to each other, you know what I mean, like head to foot and elbow to elbow, and you told them they had to lay next to each other so that there was no space greater than what I just described, it would be the state I just described would be the size, okay? It's one of these New England states, you know what I mean? So in that aspect, the world is far from overpopulated. And these, whatever they call problems with what they call overpopulation, you know what I mean, can be solved. I'll give you one example. The 7% of the amount of electricity that when it's sent from where it's produced to where it's used is lost in a scientific term called line loss. Okay, now people pump natural gas into their homes. I use it almost on a daily basis for making omelets in the morning. I use it for frying chicken and burgers, and I use it for cooking beans and such. Right? Natural gas, it's methane. Essentially, it's a byproduct from a bacteria that creates essentially bacterium that live in the earth, create methyl alcohol, in which case is methane is natural gas, okay? Okay, now, so we have a gas that's flammable that comes into the home, right? We have electricity that comes into the home, but 7% of it is lost from line loss. They have nuclear power plants, and they're toxic, they're poisonous, they're radioactive, they're fucking subject to potential just huge cataclysmic, you know, what do I want to say, like situations as to where is it, they're nasty. They say it's clean energy except for when there's like a meltdown, you know what I mean? Then it's fucking really, 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 really dirty energy, and it lasts a really long time. Now, I can't tell you I have a better solution. I think I do, but I can't get everybody on board for it and talk about it also too in this video. If I don't remember, I'll talk about it now. What we do is we take, and this is actually part of it anyway, so you use both a combination of nuclear power plants and major solar panel grid platform apparatuses, whatever you want to call. Like, for example, what I said was somebody made a farm, right? Solar farm. And the solar panels were 3 feet off the ground. And I'm like, these dipshit jackasses, if they put it at least 8 to 12 feet off the ground, at the very least or the very most, people could live, or somewhere in between, people could live underneath these solar panels. And like one of the, you know, whatever wasn't used for the dwelling would be sold to the electric company or what have you. Do you know what I mean? So maybe you would get a discount on your electricity, or have to pay, you know, or whatever the deal condition would be for the fact that marginally amount of your sunlight would be blocked by a solar panel. Now, I think that just like, okay, what we do is we have a situation where we pump hydrogen into people's houses instead of natural gas or electricity. What I've invented was a turbine, right? That is the first engine that was ever made. I don't know what its name. I don't know who invented it. I think it was a Greek. Essentially was a round sphere over a fire with a freaking pin through it, or holding each side rather, and a nozzle going to the right and a nozzle going to the left. And the thing spun when it got hotter, because, you know. So what you do is you have, and I want to run it up and down instead of horizontally. I want to run it vertically. So this is my opinion, right? Since the electricity that you get from the sun on a yearly basis, and we share north for south, half of our peak energy that we produce in the northern hemisphere gets shipped to the southern hemisphere when it's their winter. Vice versa, in major large desert areas. Now, I'm not saying that someone shouldn't make a fee or a profit, but all this money needs to come out of some other place than the ID mechanism that everything has to be for profit. Once you get rid of the fact that the idea that everything has to be done and only things are done for profit, then somebody like Barack Obama that claims to give a hoot about the amount of CO2 in the Earth's atmosphere will come on to the rational conclusion that only Sean Cade is correct and true for what his what's it called? What I am is a conceptual artist. You understand? A technician, okay, that might lack some of the absolute, I can't tell you the circuitry, the process involved to make a solar panel, but I know that they exist. Now I know that my dad says that solar panels are let's see here, not cost effective is what he says, right? So naturally, just forget about profit and save the fucking earth, assholes. Now look, the most, and I had a chart, I think it was nuclear, followed by, and then you got wind and solar that are dramatically more expensive, okay? Now, I'm still going to call it free energy, because once the investment is made in the system, and the entire system's set up on and working and running, right? Now, I'm talking about is a constant use situation. Understand? Where you don't see storing highly explosive gas is, there's no need for it. There's no necessity. You understand? If you have a situation, well, now I'm going to go back to talk about my rotary engine, essentially, that's also, that actually produces electricity using nozzles similar to jet engines to burn hydrogen and create heat energy to heat the house, to purify water, and to turn the turbine to create electricity. Now, the water that's created goes in your house, somewhere designated part of your house, whether in the house, outside of the house, whether in the basement or on the roof, somewhere on the property, you'll have a place to store water that's created by this turbine that constantly runs, okay? Now, even if you don't use energy and the heat gets wasted because it's summertime and it's in a different type of hyper enclosure as not to increase the heat for the house, and you don't use all the water and your water reservoirs are full, and you use electricity, but the electricity that gets charged up into, say, batteries or pressure tanks that release turbines to spin. What happens is, because it's like, okay, what we have in America today is if you want electricity, you turn on a light. The electric's powered and your meter turns. You want water, you turn the faucet on, and then the meter turns. You want, cook a omelet, an egg sandwich or whatever, you turn the burner on and the meter runs. What I'm talking about is a constant production of electricity, heat, and water that will just simply run down the drain on the overflow unit if it's not used. You understand? So I'm talking about surplus, and the only waste is water, where you can create heat, and then the turbine, when it's spinning, is creating electricity all of the time, right? It's either charging batteries or it's being used to power lights and whatever else equipment. Now, I'm not a technician in the way that I know that if I touch the wrong wire, I'll get zapped. You know what I mean? I touch the wrong wire, I'll get electrocuted. You understand? So, we have these huge, massive solar panel power plants set up, and I'm against the reflectors because they create an intense amount of heat, and if anything would increase global warming, it would be massive arrays of reflective panels. Okay, and birds fly by and just burst into flames are rumored to happen. I've never seen it myself, so all I know is it's a rumor. It could be true, or it could be true or false rumor. But allegedly, birds fly by these fucking mirrors and just burst into flames. So those aren't any good, right? You got, however, now the technicians like myself and ones that are more highly, I'm a conceptual, I'm a conceptual artist, right? A conceptual genius. Okay, there's people that study how big of a landmass you would need to have to supply electricity for the entire, and I'm only talking about the north and southern hemisphere right now. And it's an energy system sharing plan where we take, the solar panels actually produce hydrogen. The hydrogen gets shipped in what I would say pipes, which is really piped, right? You pipe the hydrogen. Right now, since we get less light in the summertime, right? We take a portion, either half or a portion of our maximum yield, and we put in a pipe, okay, on pumping stations from the northern hemisphere all the way to the southern hemisphere. Now, I'm not sure what the electric demands are for the southern hemisphere. Obviously, it doesn't have to be 50% exactly, but there is huge, massive deserts in places, and we can pump hydrogen, and as long as it's constantly flowing, as long as it's constantly being used constantly in people's houses through this turbine that spins and produces electricity, and as long as there's one-way valves constantly, you're not going to have to worry about major explosions because there's not going to be enough hydrogen stored. So essentially, when you think about the fact that the coal that people burn for electricity is really just stored sunlight, and I don't have the facts on how big of an area you would need, you know what I mean? But to think about the fact that these areas can be 12 feet off the ground. Now I'm a minimalist, okay? Okay, so, and I'm also a proponent of like the small house nation. I know it's not for everyone, and I've seen a house in Erie. It's off a Green Garden somewhere in that area, I think, where you walk by it and it's just, they got lights on lamp poles, they got lights on the inside, and the whole entire house is completely lit up. You know what I mean? And if that's the way they want to spend their money, that's fine. You know what I mean? So, I'm not saying everyone has to be a conservative, an ultra-conservative, whatever, and they can spend their money however they want, not as long as it doesn't affect somebody else's rights or whatever. But point being is essentially, it's a constantly delivered system of generated use with no storage. Now I'm reminded in the Bible where it talks about the manna that fell from heaven, right? And it wasn't to be stored, it was to be used, and then it wasn't to be stored. You know what I mean? It's usage, it's not storage. People think about saving this, saving that, putting that away for this for later. You got people buried in consumer items in their house, and they can't even fucking move. You know what I mean? And if that makes them feel well, fine and dandy and wealthy or whatever. But I can't say that I keep my environments always like, you know, hyper super tight and what's it called? Not tight, but neat and tidy is what I was trying to say, right? I do periods of cleanup. It lasts for about 45 minutes, and then it starts accumulating things not necessarily put in the right position, and I need to work on that. You know what I mean? There's no reason why I should have to drink out of plastic bottles that's poisonous, because I can't drink the water because they got to put bleach in it to kill bacteria, when I could be drinking the water that drips off of the freaking hydrogen cylinder that rotates at a constant speed and produces a constant amount of electricity and produces pure water, right? And it produces heat energy. You know what I'm saying? Because it'll have a unit where there'll be hydrogen burners in the same way that they made this candle system out of these, what are they called? Okay, terracotta pots. And I didn't invent the terracotta pot lantern thing. What I did come up with, I said, if you could somehow save that heat energy that comes off a candle, you know how much energy you would have? And someone came out with that system. So you have a hydrogen flame burning inside of a cylinder, and then it goes up to the top where there's a flat part, and then there's little holes in the top of that, and then it goes down to another cylinder to the bottom where there's holes in the bottom of that, and the heat, while it's radiating through this metal container that'll, have probably water-filled pipes to distribute the heat around the house and whatnot. And I'm not telling you that it's going to heat your house as well as a goddamn, whatever the heck, forced air unit or what have you. And I'm not telling you that people should live in huge ass mansions either. You know what I'm saying? I like igloos. You know what I mean? Made out of. I came up with this idea of you have these castles that they build in the wintertime in areas. They're called ice castles. Now, if you had radiating pipes, the same that are in an ice skate rink, the shape of a dome, and then you had, you sprayed water on it so it froze. Year round, as long as you protected it from the sun, right, and put blankets on it, some sort of blanket on it, you'd have cooled house, and then naturally you need to have a certain amount of whatever in the wintertime. Now, I don't know what to tell you about it. It dawned on me when I was watching this, like it was an Asian, she was either, Chinese or Japanese to some odd oriental extent, and she did some kind of, twist, jump up in the air, triple freaking whatever it's called, and she landed flat on her ass, and the way her ass hit the ice and the way that just the muscle and fat in her ass jiggled, I thought, wow, ice is really solid. Not that I didn't ever know that before or think that, but I'm like, that's like about as hard as, you wouldn't, if you had super smooth concrete in a hockey rink, right, like the beautiful floors at Walmart, for example, and you fell flat on your ass, I really don't believe that, because I can notice the difference between walking on concrete and walking on asphalt. It is way more comfortable to walk on asphalt than it is to walk on concrete. Okay, that's just a tiny little bit of difference that I notice, but I don't think you could tell the difference between concrete, right, and ice if you just jumped up on the air and landed flat on your ass, So I don't see why you can't make ice dome. Now, if you and I'm not saying if you have to, and I'm almost saying you must, okay? And this is where, like, I don't agree with Bernie Sanders on a whole lot of things, okay? Like, the problem with someone like Bernie Sanders is he thinks that the responsibility lies on the worker to produce wealth. The government produces money out of thin fucking air, okay? Where there was no money before, okay? Produces wealth where there was no wealth. You understand? So, to just completely get rid of the profit model on something that's as important as allegedly saving the environment, and you do it with money that doesn't even exist and doesn't have to come off the back of the American worker, white, black, Jewish, American, Indian, or however many blankety blank, some other words that I could put in the freaking thing in any particular order of the amount of people that there are different in this country. And I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat or independent, part of the Green Party. I pretty much want to use the fuck every between every word, but I'm trying to refrain myself. It's an English word. I looked it up in Saturday Attention. I get pissed off and I use it liberally. Okay? And I don't care if you're a conservative either. You understand? If you want to save the... And I don't want to goddamn the environment. You know what I mean? It's not up to me anyways. You follow me? I can't goddamn anything. All I can do is pray that God does. So you have to understand, right? Now, people that make money on energy should just fucking shoot themselves, I guess. You understand? Right? If you want to fucking save any fucking thing, you know what I mean? Save the environment. Save yourself. You know? You're putting money away and you're giving your kids a whole shitload of it, letting them, you know, inherit your business, whatever, right? So that they can inherit what? A toxic fucking wasteland? Now, I don't believe in the greenhouse effect, right? I don't believe in giving plants extra CO2 to fucking choke on, okay? Or whatever. I want to know how the fuck my oxygen level's doing. No one even talks about it. You know what I mean? If you got oxygen taking place in the internal combustion engine, changing into fucking something else, obviously, changing into something fucking else, obviously, is going to be decreasing to some fractional marginal percentile. Tell me something important. You understand? So I already got all the world's problems figured out as far as I'm concerned. It's just, I'm not going to give you no goddamn motherfucking laser light show to entertain yourself while you're looking in a fucking screen. Okay? Not gonna do it. I don't need to show you pictures, charts, graphs. If I'm wrong about a particular piece of information, you make god dang well freaking certain you correct me. You know what I mean? You want to argue, you don't have fellowship without argument. Unless you want to sit around kissing each other's ass all day long. I'm not even pissed. It's kind of just like comedy right there, right? You want to be polite. You know what I mean? All the wars humans fucking had over history. And somehow politeness is the fucking greatest fucking thing on earth. Oh, and an American male with a... I'm talking to the entire universe right now. American males aren't allowed to get mad, remember? That's a bunch of horse shit.